Hey folks, in this how-to, my colleague Hassan El-Tawil is going to walk you through how to set up G500 hot redundancy on the MCP platform. So with no further ado, let's jump in and we'll get to it.
Okay, in this how-to, we're gonna cover the G500 or the MCP platform hot redundancy. The hot redundancy setup is very simple. Now I will give you some hints and we'll show you some tools and setups that will assist you during the setup of the G500 or the MCP hot redundancy. The steps are very simple. First, you set up an active IP address for both devices of the MCP. Then you set up the redundancy parameters and you do a reboot. And then you exchange the keys and you do a reboot. There is many ways to do it. This is just a suggested way to save you from all the surprises. As you get more experienced, you will have better idea of what to do with the parameters, what's a very good parameter that work for your site or your setup. Also, you can avoid some of the reboots if you want in the process, but I'm just showing you how I would do it if I'm setting up this hot redundancy. And finally, we're gonna show you a download of the configuration using DSAS and or the DS Agile Studio configuration tool. Also, we're gonna connect a UR relay and just show you the UR relay communicating with the two G500s on the active IP address toward the end, and of course accessing the MCP HMI. All right, so let's get to it. So we're here in a lab setup. What we have is we have two G500s. I've already put the simple name and password on each of them. And one is designated as Gateway A. It has an adapter address 192.168.1 and Gateway B, which has an adapter address of 192.168.1 and 2. As a first step, make sure you can ping them. You can access them from the PC that you're trying to configure and make sure they can ping each other. So I will show you that in the setup process. It's very important that you have all your devices communicating through the switch to each other. Okay. Like I said, the first step is to set up an active IP address, which you can see here. It's 192.168.1.3, which is the IP address where both G500 look as a single device to the rest of the world. So every device like the UR relay, the HMI will communicate through the active IP address. Now, the G500 that is communicating, in this case, both of them are in a hot redundancy status. If one of them is out, then the one that is active is the one that will claim the 192.168.1.3. Now, during the setup, I will refer to them as Gateway A and Gateway B, and thanks to our team here, they will show you basically the LEDs on both. Just pay attention to the LEDs during the setup process. It's very important that you get familiar with these LEDs. If you're setting it remotely, you can, and there is ways to access those LEDs from the terminal, and I can show you that toward the end of the video on how to access these LEDs from an SSH session. Okay, so considering that you have a good idea of how this is gonna run, we're gonna show you both devices live, and we'll talk about them physically, and then we will start our configuration.
Okay, so we've got this G500, which we're gonna refer to it as Gateway A, and we have labeled it as Gateway A just to make our life easy. It's good to label them during the setup. This is up to you, but it's a good idea to know which is your Gateway A, which is your Gateway B. This way, when it's rebooting, you know that the right one is restarting. Also, you've got to monitor these LEDs on the G500. I'll show you the monitor as we go through the steps of the setup. And what you will see is these LEDs, whether they're flashing, they're giving a certain color, that's in the document. Then you will know why your redundancy didn't work or what did you do wrong during the setup of the redundancy. So it's a good indicator to keep an eye on it. Also, it's a good indicator to keep an eye on your network activity. So if your network is not connected, for example, check the connection to your switch. Make sure your switch is connected and working. And if you can't ping, the first thing to do is check this LED, make sure that there is a physical connection. Maybe the physical connection is not there before you start targeting all the software. So this is as far as Gateway A goes. So a very good tool to have during your setup is if you have two monitors, each monitor connected to one of the G500s, you really don't need to have it, but it's a good thing to have because you can see what's going on with your G500s as you're setting up the redundancy. And in this case, I've got two monitors, keyboard, mouse connected to each one of the gateways. So this way I can always monitor and see if the gateway is rebooting, what is the setup and all of that. Now, for best monitor connection, make sure you have a DP connection cable, just like this one. It saves you from some of the non-compliance or non-conformity. If you keep changing to HDMI or DVI, it may not connect to the G500. So for best is DP to DP connection.
Okay, so we have two devices here, or two gateways, G500, two MCPs. The IP address of the MCP-A is 192.168.1.1 and MCP-B is 192.168.1.2. And at the end of this process, both of them are going to communicate on the common or the active IP address 192.168.1.3. So first thing first, make sure you can ping both devices and that the devices can ping each other, like all of them, all of the settings is on the same network. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that quickly here. So I'm going to ping 192.168.1.1. It works. And we're going to ping 192.168.1.2. And we're going to SSH into 192.168.1.1. And from inside this device, we're going to ping the other device. So I'm going to ping 192.168.1.2. And we can. All right, so perfect. So we've got this device connecting to the first G500 and the second device connecting to the second G500. And if you watch the LEDs on the G500, what you will see is the network connection is healthy and blinking. And also you will see the first two LEDs to be the top one is green and the second one is off. So steady green and steady off. And that tells us that at this moment, they are in a single setup, which means they're not redundant, but they're both healthy, up and running and in a single setup. All right. So next step, we're going to set up the active IP address. Okay. So to set up the active IP address, we're just gonna log into the first one. And we're going to go to the network interface and we're going to go to net1, current configuration, net1, static IP address. Now it already have what we call an adapter IP address, which is the 192.168.1.1. We're going to add the active IP address, which is the common IP address for both devices, right? So I'm gonna click on configure the active IP address, and that will be 192.168.1.3, right? 255.255.255.0, and we'll click confirm. Click yes. All right, I'm gonna go to the home and reboot this device, okay? So click reboot and say yes, and click yes. And what you will see is the G500A or gateway A will go through a reboot. Now on the monitor for G500A, as you can see, you can see the rebooting. And that's why I said a local monitor will always help you with knowing what state the G500 is going through. So your G500, as you can see right now, the top two LEDs are off and it's going through a reboot. Meanwhile, we will configure the second, the gateway B. So I'm just gonna log into gateway B here and do the exact same steps again. So I'll configure the interfaces, net one, configure edit, net one, and go to static IP address. Now it has an adapter IP address of 192.168.1.2, and we're going to add a static IP address of 192.168.1.3. And we'll put the network mask, click confirm, say yes, to home, and again, we'll take one through the reboot. So what you will see is that the gateway B will start the reboot. And you will see on the monitor for gateway B, it's restarting. Meanwhile, on the monitor for gateway A, it's about to start up. And once it starts up, we will log back into the gateway A and go to the next step. Okay, so right now, both devices have started up. We can see the LED on the top gateway, it's green, and the second one is the steady off, and the gateway B, we've got the top LED steady green, and the second LED is steady off, and both monitors are showing me that, yeah, I can log into the G500, it's ready for me, or the MCP is ready for me. Okay, so we will start with the first one. And we'll go to the redundancy setup at this point. All right, what I normally do is I go through every menu in here. Because this is default, it will be set up to default, but I like to do it anyway. So from a default perspective, first step is we enable the redundancy, and we will do it on both in parallel. This way you can see it. And I will go to redundancy here. And we're going to enable redundancy on the second one. So we'll enable hot redundancy on both. So we select hot redundancy, click confirm. Select hot redundancy, click confirm. say OK, say OK in this one. Second thing, we are going to set the heartbeat. I get a lot of questions during class setup, but use these numbers as a guide. It's written in front of you, 300 millisecond and 3 respectively. As you become more and more familiar with this setup, you will find the right and efficient numbers that work for your environment. But for now, I'm just going to use these numbers. So 303, all right? So we'll configure the heartbeat timeout, which is already set up to 300, but here we'll do it one more time. So we'll say this is 300, say yes. Okay, and configure the heartbeat retries to be 3. Yes. Click OK, we'll take this back. And on the B, we will do the same. We'll configure the heartbeat timeout to be 300. A, configure the retries, 3, confirm. Okay, click yes. As you can see, the LEDs, nothing has changed. It's still in the same setup, and we'll go back to our redundancy menu on the gateway B. Now for the configure the peer IP address on the 192.168.1.1, we're going to put the peer IP address, which is 192.168.1.2. On the 192.168.1.2, we will put the 1.1 address. All right, so configure or update the IP address in here, and we will put it 192.168.1.2 and click confirm. Now, this might be the most, or in the classroom, sometimes it gets confusing. You really don't need to put a secondary adapter address unless there is a secondary adapter address that you need to put. So here, don't click cancel, because that will cancel the IP address that you put at the beginning. You have to click confirm, right? And do you want to save? Yes. Click OK, and we'll configure the IP address for the second device, 192.168.1.1. And click confirm. Save. Yes. Click OK, and then we go back to the main redundancy. It's up to you to configure time sync with the standby. I think it's a good thing to have, so I'm just gonna enable it. Okay, now this is the most important thing, is to designate the gateway. So this is the 1.1 gateway, and that's our gateway A. So let's select gateway A on this one and click OK. And on this one, we will select gateway B. Click OK. We go back to the redundancy menu. Skip the setup key. That's the next step once we finish the reboot. Okay. And configure switch panel. We'll set it to slave, because in this hot redundancy, we don't have a switch panel. Okay. Okay. Now, if we look at the summary, as you can see, they're both hot, 303 single LAN, enabled, 192.168.1.2 is the peer IP address. Here is 192.168.1.1. So we're in good shape to do our reboot, and we'll click OK, go to the first one. It's advisable to reboot the gateway A and then reboot the gateway B. Okay, and we will click reboot and say yes, and type in the yes again. and reboot. Say yes, type yes. Okay, now what's important is when they start up again is to monitor the LEDs as they start. Now, as you can see on the screen of the gateway A and the screen of the gateway B on the side, you will see that both devices are restarting at this point. And because we restarted the gateway A first, it will have a better performance where it will start faster than gateway B, and that will make it start in a active mode. As we can see that gateway A is almost ready to start, and this is a good point to start monitoring or taking a look at the LEDs. So for gateway A, we can see the G500 logo. You see that blinking red on the gateway A? That's a very good indication that you've done the right job. It means that the gateway A is active, it has started. It's not communicating to gateway B, but it's ready to communicate to gateway B. If you see this red on A and B, that's perfect. It means you have set up both of them in a hot redundancy. They haven't exchanged the keys. That's why it's red and blinking. All right, so that's a key. That's very important. Okay, now we'll go for our last step, which is the exchange of the keys. So this will be a fast step. Basically, we need to go into the A. I'm just going to log in after the reboot. And we'll log into the B. All right, we'll go back into the redundancy menu. And at this stage, we're going to exchange the authentication keys between the peer gateways. Now for that, you need the name and password for each gateway. So it's saying that the current primary IP 192.168.1.2 for the peer, and that's true. So I'm gonna click yes. We put a username that's on the peer. Click confirm and say yes. When it prompted for the password, we put in the password as if we're logging into the gateway B. All right. Now at the end of this, it tells you that you also have to perform this operation on the peer gateway. So we click OK. We go to the peer gateway and we click yes. And we do the same, put in the name, and we put in a password. Say OK. And now that we have both of them set up, as you can see on the LED, they're still green and red. So we will reboot A. Click yes, and then reboot device B. So we wait for device A to start its reboot sequence. As you can see, now the second LED is not red. Okay, and then we click OK. And the same for the gateway B. You will see the second LED will be off, and it will go through a reboot status. I can also see the reboot status on the side monitors. Okay, so now the G500A is about to start, and it's a good time to start monitoring the LEDs on the G500A. Wait, you saw how it went from red to blinking orange? Okay, and we can see it. On the A, it's green with blinking orange, and on the B, it's blinking orange with green. That's very good. It means that they are talking to each other, but they don't have the same configuration. So the next step is to start DSAS and get the configuration of both devices, and then we try to sync the configuration through the HMI. So here we are in DSAS, and we're just going to create a project. I'm just going to call this one Redundancy. And we will go to the device template. We're going to add an MCP device. And we'll enter the name of it. We'll call it Hot for now. This is a Hot Redundancy. I'm just going to place the IP address of the first G500 192.168.1.1, and I'm going to read the firmware. So we've got it, and if you look into the redundancy, it's already set up to hot, which means that you've done perfect job, right? Okay, now we want to talk to a UR relay, so I'm just going to quickly configure a 61850 UR relay. So I'm just going to go to the loader. And we're going to add a voltage area. Add a bay. Then we will pick up our server, our UR server. Okay, select the IP address 192.168.1.7, which is communicating on, and then we double click on the server and we select a point that's served by the UR. We go to the assign a data set, we make a report, and that's about it. Now our configuration is ready for the gateway A. I'm just gonna generate the configuration. Okay, so now my device is ready and we're going to download the configuration to the device. So click on sync to device, and we don't want to synchronize from device anymore, and we'll just put the name. Okay, now that my device will have the configuration, I'm just going to log into the HMI of the device and show you how to sync the configuration from gateway A to gateway B. Okay, so now we want to start our HMI. We connect to gateway A. And in here, the reason we see the blinking LEDs on, so as you can see on the blinking LEDs, they are both blinking orange. For the standby, the gateway B, it's the top LED. For the gateway A, it's the second LED. We will go to the points details screen, go to the application, select the redundancy manager, go to details. And if you look in the digital input, you can see that the system is redundant, gateway A is active, but you've got standby config out of sync. So to force the configuration to the second device, we go to the digital output sync config, right click and say digital output interface, execute, say OK. If everything goes well at this point, you can look at the LEDs and you see that it turns into red momentarily because both of them are syncing the configuration between them. And also on the screen, you can tell that they're still going through the syncing process. All right, and it's saying that the standby is not available. Now, that standby indication went away. And this is the point which you want to reach to. If you have the gateway A LED is a green with a steady orange as a second LED, and on gateway B, you have the first one is steady orange with a green, you have done a perfect configuration and your devices are redundant. So now we can close out of the HMI that's connected to the gateway A and log into the active HMI. So I'm just going to log into the 192.168.1.3. Say yes. Go to admin. As you can see, I'm on the active IP, the active G500, which is G500A. And in here, it will tell you which one you're logged in. So in this case, where G500A is in the one communicating on the active IP address. And if I look at the points, I can see my UR device. And if I look at connections, I can see total transactions, 36 active reports to it. So it's working. If we look at the redundancy at this point and the redundancy manager, we can see that there is no issues whatsoever. In case your LED stays in the blinking, it doesn't go steady, it means that you might have a difference in the hardware or a difference in the ordering code or a difference in some setup between the two G500. So you would have to go back and check thoroughly these G500. So here I'll give you a quick hints on how to do that. I'm just gonna log into an SSH terminal. And in here you can do an MCP SI. In this MCP SI, one thing that's common is make sure that you check the CPU core. So in this one, we have the CPU core as 4, and you need to have the same CPU core on the other one. Okay. Another thing that you can do is if you're sitting remotely to the G500s and you don't have a local access to the LEDs, you can run the command rd2, and you would use the S for the active for the gateway A. If you are on gateway B, you would use P, all right? And when I press enter, it tells me redundancy type is hot, current MCP state is active. So this is another way of giving the same indicators like those LEDs, even though, but the LEDs at the front are better, easier to detect as that everything is up and running. Okay, so as you can see, we have finished our redundancy setup. Hope to see you in future trainings. Thanks, bye.
Lastly, I want to thank you for watching this training content video. And if you're looking for more great content, take a minute and check out the Resources Hub on the GE website. You can do that by typing resources.gegridsolutions.com into your browser, or just click the link in the description of this video and it'll take you right there. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.